Hi, I'm Becky Rose, and I've had another question on After Forever After. This one is from Phil, the Time Warrior, on Twitter. He says, "Hi Becky, another question. I like maps. What thought prep went into the geography of the game?" Well, for me, maps really are the prep of the game. When I'm building a world and I'm building the story, I find that a great way to do that is to actually draw the map. So as I'm drawing the map, the ideas come, and I might put something down, and right, that looks good there. I don't know why it's there yet, so I'll just go do something else, and then maybe that links to that, and then the story comes, or maybe I just wipe that other thing out. And as I'm creating that map, the history of the world builds in my mind. So I've placed a city, and I've placed another city for a different. Let's say I've got a region that's orcs. This mountain range is full of goblins or something. So I've placed this city that's a primarily 70% human population, and I've got these goblins here in this mountain. What happens? How does that influence the culture of these people? How does that influence the history? So I think, these people they're not in a temperate climate, so life is quite hard here. And they're facing an insurmountable odds of goblins. So how do they do that? Well, their biggest problem is going to be keeping these forts stocked in the north that are their defensive line against the constant goblin incursions. So they need people for that. What's their form of government? Well, these are a disparate people that don't really have a central government. Each settlement is independent, but let's say they have a tithe. They have a tithe of people that have to be sent to the forts, and the further south you are, the further away from the goblins, the more people you have to send, and that actually makes the south quite sparsely populated, because so many people who live in the south have to be sent north to fight the goblins in order to live in this region. So people will actually risk living closer to the goblins in order to be less likely to have to fight them. So it creates some quite interesting cultural dynamics. And then from there is, do they allow women to fight, or are they a little misogynistic in their views? Well, if they don't allow the women to fight, it means the south is full of women. What impact does that have on the culture? And then if that doesn't work out, I maybe undo that thought. And that's how I build my world. I start with the map. But the thing is, you have to be careful when you use a map to generate your backstories and your history, because you can be limited both by your technology and your ability to draw. I find that I can be limited by the latter. So I use Inkarnate to draw my maps at the moment. What I'm hoping, when I publish this game, I'm hoping I can get a proper artist to redo the map as a proper thing. Maybe even a poster, pull-out poster or something, but probably as 4 individual maps, as I've drawn it, just done nicer than Inkarnate. I mean, Inkarnate does a fantastic job for somebody without much skill like myself, but I think get a proper artist on it and it will always look better. But it's a great tool for inspiring ideas, and as I'm drawing that world, I find just the history begins to build itself, and then I'll do things like I'll write short stories up. Actually, the next thing I do, or I did, in this case after that, was I wrote laws of the 3 cities. When I did the very first map that anyone who's watched my online campaign will have seen, that's of the 4 maps I'm going to put in the book, that's the sort of southwest corner of it. The world will go off to the west and south. That's just open for players to define at the moment. But that had 3 cities, so I wrote the laws of those 3 cities. When I did the other 3, I knew I wasn't going to go and do much work fleshing out the background on those when I drew them. So I just had to write down the history I had thought of when I was drawing the maps. But I write the laws of the city because I think I've got to define the government type. That's one of the first questions I ask. Is I look at different government types and think, right, it'd be cool to try one of them in this world. So let's try this type of government. And as the stories are coming, I just try to make them as fantastical as I can and make the history as dramatic and epic as I can get away with, and it just builds itself. That's kind of how I do it. So yeah, I start with the map. Let me just check your question again, make sure I've probably answered it. What kind of prep went into the geography of the game? Geography is interesting because, like, if you're using a tool like Incarnate, you can very easily get stuck in the here's some plains, here's a desert, here's some sea, here's a river, here's some mountains, here's a city, because it gives you tools for that, or forest. It gives you tools for that, and it's very easy to get stuck into those standard terrain types. You've got to look for ways to go beyond that, to bring in the fantastical. You don't want to just create Earth 2 in the modern world, which is not scary unless you're in Libya or Syria. Earth 2.0 in role-playing would be a dull place. You'd have a bit of desert, you'd have a bit of... We're doing a fantasy game. I want mountains tumbling out of the clouds. I want a big archway for no reason, whatever reason, I don't know, think of something. Dramatic scenery is important in a fantasy world. It helps establish the fact that this is not Earth, that this is another world, that this is an escape from reality when you're playing it. So yeah, don't start with a tool like Incarnate, get stuff down, but don't limit yourself to that. Spend some time thinking about your map and what would make it cooler without being sat in front of the program, and then go find a way to put that in, rather than just taking what comes out of the software and saying, yep, that's it, that's my map.